Good morning to you. It is Tuesday, September 13th at 11:53 a.m., just before lunchtime for many of you. Thanks for tuning in. Wanted to do a quick preview of the Purdue versus Syracuse game, which is Saturday in Syracuse, New York, in the former Carrier Dome. I don't know the new name, but yeah, this is an interesting game. It's one of those games that I think should be another good barometer for where Purdue stands. Last Saturday, of course, versus Indiana State, there was not much of a measure of anything other than Purdue's ability to just handle its business and do what it's supposed to do. Um, Syracuse has there's a lot of interesting subplots in this one, and I'll talk about that. But first, let me thank our sponsors. Let me thank AJ's when you're on campus for the Florida Atlantic game in 2 weeks. Head over to AJ's before you do it. Have a pint, enjoy the many televisions in the place, and some pub fare, some good stuff. Mac and cheese bites, burgers, Italian beef. Can't go wrong, really. Also, head over to Martin Vintage and are boiled at checkout. Get 15% off. MartinVintage.com. Thanks to both of them. So I got to watch the Syracuse weekly press conference with Dino Babers. I've always liked Dino Babers. He's a Boiled Sports staff favorite. I think pretty much everybody on staff likes, or at BS, likes Dino Babers. One of the interesting connections, of course, to Babers is that he was at Purdue from 91 to 93 when Jim Coletta was there. He was the wide receivers coach. That means he and I were on campus at the same time for 1 year. I got on campus in 93. But if you listen to Babers for one post-game interview or one of these press conferences, I think pretty quickly you'll like him too. He's a no-nonsense type of guy. His track record's quite good, and it feels like this year he's got Syracuse playing like many people thought they'd be playing a little bit earlier. But he installed, I believe, a new offense with the help of a new offensive coordinator, and it's paying big dividends. The offense this year for Syracuse in two contests has been nearly unstoppable. They've played a kind of an undisciplined Louisville team. I watched Louisville play versus, was it Central Florida on Friday night? Maybe you watched it too. Louisville won that game. They closed that one out. The defensive backs did a good job. But Louisville has some problems, especially in the first game. They were getting predictably counterpunched, meaning their defensive backs would come up, and Syracuse's play caller had everything dialed in. The counter punches were just absolutely destroying Louisville, whether it was delay draws or jailbreak screens, trying to play their aggressiveness against them. Syracuse had all the answers. 31-7 was the final score. Then they played UConn. That game's really interesting because UConn pretty much gave 14 points to Syracuse. They had one where quarterback was sacked, fumbled the ball, picked up, run in. Another one was a punt return that the ball pretty much popped directly out of the punt returner's hands right into a Syracuse gunner's hands. He just went up right at the center field and scored. They won that one 48-14. So what makes Syracuse so good? Pretty simple. Two guys are really good on that team. Their quarterback Schrader is a dual threat guy. He's a bit deceiving when you watch him play because he's a taller guy. Isn't the quickest looking quarterback. A lot of guys that will tuck the ball have very quick strides. He has very long strides. But when he gets out in the open field, he's very dangerous. And he's really good at when a play breaks down, seeing, okay, the linebacker's backs are turned, so I've got some room. Last year, he had 800 yards rushing in 21. He's a very good quarterback, though, too. He could pass the ball. 79% completion rate this year. He's really impressive. He's playing good football. And then, of course, Sean Tucker, number 34, is the guy that, if you're a Purdue fan, that's the guy that you should have your eye on every offensive play. I'm sure. I think what Purdue's going to have to do, they got some things against them right now because Jalen Graham's out. I would think Jalen Graham would have been a perfect spy for Schrader. But Graham's going to be out for 4 or 5 weeks, I believe. And which isn't great news, of course. Purdue's best defender is out for a while, but he tried to tough it out, couldn't make it go. But Tucker, though, he can catch the ball. I think he has 115 yards receiving this year. And on top of that, he's their top rusher by a lot. He's averaging 4.1, 4.2 yards a carry, I think. Last year, he had a huge year, nearly 1,500 yards, 1,496 yards. And he averaged 6 yards a carry over the season. He was an All-American all over, just by everybody. He was either All-American or All-American honorable mention. It's his third year on campus, although Syracuse lists him as a sophomore. I don't think he's going to play Syracuse after this year. I think he's going to be in the NFL. He looks like that type of guy. I think he's 5'10", like 210 pounds. Just looks the part. So I would say if you're looking at two guys that are the difference makers for Syracuse on offense, of course, Tucker and Schrader. I don't really have too much to add here. I thought, let's see, the national rankings were kind of interesting. Syracuse is 51st in America, according to CBS. Purdue's 38th. And Syracuse, they're favored by, I think, 1.5 or a point, depending on who you're talking to. And the spread has dropped a little bit. A lot of people, Anish talked about this, I don't really know anything about Vegas, but Vegas is a pretty good gauge of what people are thinking about these teams with the limited information we have. But that's a pretty even contest, and I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout. To me, the difference is going to be a couple things. One, how will Aiden O'Connell do versus real competition that isn't Penn State's defensive backs? Syracuse DBs make some mistakes. They got one really good DB. I can't remember his name right now. He's got an interception on the season. He's got a bunch of passes defended. I think he's their leading tackler with 12. He's very good. I cannot remember his name right now. But if O'Connell can do what we saw him do as he got into rhythm last year, where he's completing a high percentage of his passes, not panicking and not trying to throw into the teeth of defense, because like versus Penn State, we saw a couple times where it looked like he was forcing it into places where there wasn't room to make a play. Part of the reason there wasn't room to make a play, though, is because Penn State defensive backs were all over Purdue wide receivers and Durham all day. So I guess we'll see. I don't really have much else to talk about here in this game other than, like I said, I'm a big fan of Dino Babers. I got nothing against Syracuse. These are kind of tough games when you don't have any of that fire in your belly against a team. Syracuse just looks like a really good offensive team. Looks like a solid defensive team so far, but they have not played. Louisville did not look good in the first game. Louisville didn't look good in their second game in that win either, like I said. But UConn is still UConn as they try to dig out of the deep cellar that they were left in last year. One big takeaway on the highlights that I watched of the UConn Syracuse game is that Syracuse was absolutely overpowering UConn's offensive linemen with straight bull rushes, like nothing exotic, no twists, no stunts, just hitting them and getting right in the quarterback's face, and it bothered bothered UConn's quarterback all day. So, yeah. Andrew Day says ESPN has it even today. Thank you. Yeah, and I that makes sense the way it was trending. So, I think it's a game that Purdue can win. I think it's a game that Purdue should win if they're what I think they are. But this is where you start figuring it out versus these opponents on the games you say, oh, maybe not. The 50-50 games. We can start seeing if Purdue's starting to gel. Purdue still, even versus, well, that's not fair. Versus Indiana State, they look like Supermen because they were. But obviously versus Penn State, it looked like, okay, this team's still growing into themselves. Charlie Jones has already lit the world on fire. He's clearly become O'Connell's safety valve. One thing we haven't seen really develop much of at all yet is Payne Durham's role. He's not doing what I thought he would be, which would be the underneath routes that would really spell doom for teams if he got on a bit of a gallop and got into that third level. He's awfully tough for them to tackle. So we haven't seen that really. And one thing I would like to see is I'd like to see a little bit more King Daru in times that actually mattered. We harped on this versus Penn State. So that's about it. I hope your day is going well. I've been on for 10 minutes. I think I'm going to call it a day. One programming note is tomorrow, which is Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. We're going to try to record a live Handsome Hour. Tune in. Check out Twitter. We'll have the link on there. Also subscribe, hit the bell, the whole thing here on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Hammer down, comment in Twitter. Let us know. Let me know where I'm getting it wrong. If I missed out on anybody on Syracuse that's noteworthy, and or in the comments here. And appreciate your time. Have a great day. God bless you. Hammer down. We'll see you.